In this video, we're going to look at all the ins and outs of Jupiter in the 11th house, specifically in Libra. And to help us understand how this concept actually works in practice, we will use the example chart of Goldie, Hawn. So to start this off, we want to make sure that we're clear about what Jupiter symbolizes when it's in the 11th house, regardless of what sign it's in. That was exactly what we covered in the first episode of this series, so I'll put a link in the description below to the playlist of all the episodes. You can start with the first one if you want to understand all the nuances of it, which is really important actually. We can summarize and just say that Jupiter in the 11th house signifies being wealthy, being a performer or showing a lot of yourself, and also being non-authoritarian. And now that we've sort of set our bearings on what Jupiter represents in the 11th house, we also want to ask, what does Jupiter represent when it's in Libra? I also have a whole video on that in case you want to understand all the nuances of it, which I do recommend. And so I'll put a link to that in the description below as well. But so that we can continue with today's topic, we can summarize it that Jupiter in Libra signifies being learned, unselfish, fair, and successful. Now there's one more part to the recipe of how you figure out what Jupiter in the 11th house in Libra represents. And it's based on the fact that there are certain lordships that are implied or necessitated if Jupiter is in the 11th house in Libra. It's actually simpler than it sounds, so let me just explain it really quick. If Libra is the 11th house, then Jupiter's signs, which are Sagittarius and Pisces, must be the first and the fourth houses. So if Jupiter is in Libra in the 11th house, it means the Lord of the first and the Lord of the fourth is in the 11th house. So we can get meaning from that too, and that meaning is an important part of what makes Jupiter and Libra in the 11th house symbolize the things that it does symbolize. So the first house symbolizes the self and manifestation of things, or tangibility of things. And the fourth house signifies the emotion and the internal or the unseen bit of reality. The 11th house is all about performance, capacity, performance, talent, and ability to enjoy and earn profit. So then what does the first and fourth lord in the 11th house signify? Well, one thing is there's a weird thing going on with the first house being manifestive, or in other words, seeable, and the fourth house being internal, in other words, unseeable. When Jupiter is in Libra in the 11th house, then Jupiter is the lord of both of those, which unifies those two concepts in an interesting way. It unifies the visible or the manifest with the unseeable. And then it puts that unification in the 11th house, which has to do with talent and performance. The fact that we have the lord of the internal and the external in the house of performance, we get really a person that's quite able to disclose their emotions. Whether disclosing or non-disclosing, it's always interesting, it's always pleasing, it's always talented. Another thing about this situation with the lordships is that the first house being the lord of self, and the fourth house being the lord of emotions, and the 11th house being an enjoyable place, means that one tends to be happy with one's own emotions. So it's antidepressive. So their own emotional being, their own inner being, is what brings them profit or enjoyment. So now that we understand Jupiter in the 11th, Jupiter in Libra, and the first and the fourth lords in the 11th, we can put it all together and see what the most important interpretations are if Jupiter is in Libra in the 11th house. For example, Jupiter in the 11th is wealthy, Jupiter in Libra is successful, and the first and fourth lords in the 11th is at least happy. So when you put that all together, it means this person is prosperous, especially in the sense that they're happy with the comforts and luxuries that they have. That can imply that they have really high quality comforts and luxuries, or it can imply that they have the ability to be happy with whatever comforts and luxuries they have. You have to sort out that kind of detail from looking at the whole chart, not just looking at one part of it. Another thing here is Jupiter in the 11th signifies a person who's good at performance. Jupiter in Libra signifies a learned or skilled person. And the first and fourth lords in the 11th house is expressive. They're very good at expressing, right? So you put that all together and you expect Jupiter and Libra in the 11th house to be a pretty talented person. They would be especially talented in expression. And a particular type of expression is this disclosure, non-disclosure. So we can say that is demure, where they're very deft and delicate and sophisticated in their ability to kind of quietly make statements and expose their feelings. There's one other thing going on between all these categories of symbolisms. Jupiter in the 11th is non-authoritarian, and Jupiter in Libra is the same. Really, it's very interested in fairness, not in centralization of authority. So if Jupiter is in Libra and it's in the 11th house, the person will profit or be happy with being anti-hierarchical, and they will be pro the distribution of power. So you won't really find them to be the type of person that likes to make decisions entirely on their own. They like to inquire and cooperate and get approval or get suggestions from others. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, we'll use an example chart. We want to see how this theory of Jupiter and Libra in the 11th house actually works in real life situation. So you really want to look at real charts that have Jupiter and Libra in the 11th and not impose this interpretation on the chart, but rather use this interpretation as like a sounding board for the chart to see how it works with the chart. So to show you how to do that, let's use Goldie Hawn's chart because she has Jupiter in Libra in the 11th house. First of all, let's just take a general look at how well she fits the expected theory of what Jupiter in the 11th in Libra should represent. She fits it well. She kind of puts a face on it. I think she especially puts a face on what we're talking about by this demure expression and how she's making profit actually from herself and from her internal self, her emotional abilities. And she also fits the other things of being kind of liberal and anti-hierarchical and also being happy with her comforts and luxuries. She's particularly demure. So why did that particular keyword match her so well? Will it match everybody equally well that has Jupiter and Libra in the 11th house? No, it's really how it's clicking with the rest of her chart. So first of all, she has Mercury right on the ascendant. So Mercury as a planet signifies a lot of the talents and skills and demureness and dexterity and sophistication. So the fact that she has Mercury on her ascendant is really going to synergize or resonate, amplify the stuff that we see from her Jupiter in the 11th house that has to do with being talented, being artistic, being expressive, being demure or tactful, being able to say a lot with quiet or few words. Also, her moon aspects the ascendant, so she has this quiet feminine thing additionally coming from that. And also her sun is in the 12th. So the kind of the bolder, more brash, masculine traits are kept in like out of the way in the 12th house. Also, she's very attractive. And why is that? Should we expect that from anybody who has Jupiter and Libra in the 11th house? No, really. It first of all has to do again with Mercury on the ascendant. Mercury is very beautiful, in the sense of being very refined, very balanced, very symmetrical, and youthful looking. And this particular Mercury is the 7th lord, so it's not just beautiful, but it's attractive to the opposite sex. The key thing is now that aspect from the moon, from the 7th house, is going to really enhance beauty, especially when Mercury is sitting there in the ascendant too. And it's also going to really enhance sexiness because the moon is the 8th lord. And then furthermore, her first lord is doing very well because it's in the 11th house. So I think you can see how important it is to understand the theory clearly and to understand the building blocks that make the theory So we understood what Jupiter in Libra in the 11th house is supposed to symbolize. And not just that, but we went through the steps to build that interpretation so that we actually really understand what these words that we're saying mean. But even more than understanding the theory, you have to know how to put the theory in practice by looking at it in real charts. Just like it's not enough to have a seed, you have to know how to plant the seed and grow it. And the growing seeds in different ways, in different soils, and different climates produces different results. Similarly, one kind of placement, like Jupiter and Libra in the 11th house, it will contribute to the production of different results differently depending on the soil of the rest of the chart. If you want to understand the whole context of your chart, the soil in which your interpretive seeds grow, then visit my website, vicdecara.com, and click Readings. My complete chart report explains each and every nook and cranny of your chart and will keep you occupied in self-discovery for years. I also have 2 groundbreaking new reports. The first of these, Your Nakshatra, organizes your active nakshatras in order of their importance to you and presents the fundamental interpretations for the planets that occupy them. And the newest report, Star Strength, uses a system called Tarabala to unfold 90 interpretations of the nuanced relationships between all the planets in your chart, which paints a rich and detailed picture of how your various strengths cooperate or compete with each other. Order these or any of my reports and accelerate your journey to deeper self-understanding.